Everyday consumers are being bombarded with the next big thing in health, wellness, and fitness. What's the future of keeping ourselves healthy, and what's just a passing fad? Hi, I'm Joey Thurman, and if you don't know me, I'm a health and fitness expert and author. I've been fortunate enough to work with celebrities, athletes, C-suite executives, and everyone in between. I've been featured on the Today Show, Live with Kelly and Ryan, Good Morning America, TEDx, and lots of other publications. As part of my ever-increasing thirst for knowledge, which ironically happened after college, I decided to create the Fad or Future podcast. What sets this podcast apart is that I am the guinea pig for these episodes. I don't only want to bring in world-class experts on the show, I want to truly get a first-hand experience what it's like to, say, go on ketamine and trip for my depression, go on a 3-day fast drinking nothing but coffee and water for age reversal, eat nothing but plants and get the blood work done to back it up, or even get my brain mapped to see how messed up my head is from getting knocked around playing hockey. Once I try these things, I bring on the experts to talk about my experience and explain it to the audience in a digestible manner and ask the true question. Is it a fad or is it the future? Because after all, we don't want to be fatties. On this episode of the Fad or Future podcast, an ovo-vegan bodybuilder. That sounds strange, right? Can we build muscle eating plants? Does he just eat plants? Today I have Gabe Snow, celebrity personal trainer at Performance House. He's been all over. He does lots of volunteering and lots of work with veterans. He's an all-around good guy, but he tells you what an ovo-vegan is, and is it possible to add muscle tissues from just eating plants? I mean, we need protein, right? Where does the dude get his protein? Stay here for this episode of the Fad or Future podcast. Hello. What's going on? It's Joey Thurman. It's another episode of the Fad or Future podcast. Now, I don't have Jon Snow here. He's laughing. I tell you, he's got a better body than Jon Snow. If you're not a Game of Thrones fan, I tell you what, I got Gabe Snow here. Gabe Snow, man, look at that. He's got no sleeves on right now. He's making me feel quite self-conscious about myself.
He did great today. We pumped it up.
We got a little workout in. Now, Gabe, the self-proclaimed, I'm not going to say this, I'm going to say it, but you said this, self-proclaimed former fat kid.
Yes.
To arguably, well, if you talk to Matt Hesse, who I've had on this podcast before, the CEO of Performance House, one of the best training gyms in the world. Right? Would you go with that?
The gym itself, yes, one of the best training gyms in the world.
One of the best training gyms in the world.
I'm just very lucky to be one of the trainers that works within that space.
I'll tell you what. I mean, if you see this guy walking down the street, you probably have flashbacks to thinking that maybe he was your bully in high school, but
quite opposite.
He was actually the quite opposite. So, man, you've had quite the ride, and we've talked about this, doing a little bit of a pre-interview, but you just got done doing bodybuilding show. But what's interesting about what you did?
I did it vegan.
Vegan. So you no meat whatsoever. You ate a bunch of plants.
Yes. Well, the term that we wanted to steer away from, that I like to steer away from, just from questions and stigma, is ovo-vegan.
What is that's a thing? Did you just make that? You just make that up?
It's actually, Google it.
Google it.
It's up there. Okay. So it's vegan, full vegan.
Okay.
No animal product, byproduct, whatever. But except for eggs. And for me, it was just mainly egg whites.
Egg whites.
Solely because of the fact I just couldn't keep downing vegan protein shakes, and lentils and chickpeas for breakfast didn't really go so well.
Right. So what place did you get?
Second in 4 different divisions.
In 4 different divisions?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you're an underachiever.
Yes, absolutely. That's why we got the next show lined up.
All right, so you qualified for nationals, right?
Correct.
Congratulations, first off. And
thank you.
There's a lot of stigmas with vegan or plant-based. I mean, what would you say the difference is between vegan and plant-based?
Like we spoke about earlier, especially with people with plant-based, don't really reveal how plant-based they actually are.
Right.
I mean, when you go full vegan, that means you can't cook with butter. There's so many things, like especially with like the vegans who are vegan for like moral and ethical reasons. You can't really even eat things that have come in contact with anything that has to do with an animal, really.
Right.
So I didn't really take it that severe. So, I mean, I would really just mainly say that, it's flesh or not.
Okay.
It was once breathing or it wasn't. Well,
Okay.
like an egg doesn't really have a heartbeat. So, for those ethical vegans out there, hope
As
I'm not
far as I
offending.
know, I don't think an egg has
I'm not offending too many people. I didn't, take a life with the egg. But,
Okay.
yeah. So, mainly just, eating animal proteins or not.
All right. Now, you actually, dude, I mean, lots of trainers just kind of are, pun intended, meatheads. You are not a meathead. You actually have a degree in neuroscience and psychology.
Yeah, psychology with an emphasis on neuroscience. So.
Wow, so you're not just pretty.
Apparently not.
I mean, unless you just went to like some dumb school.
I mean, it was a state school. I definitely don't have very much school pride, but
I graduated from a state school too, so it's all right.
We're peers.
We're both a bunch of dummies over here. So tell me why Ovo. Why Ovo vegan? Why'd you do that? Was it health reasons? I mean, we got a little bit into you had a scare a few years back.
So yeah, I originally went, and again, I always was telling people plant-based, solely for the fact to avoid the conversation of, and that sometimes turns into an argument of being a vegan. Mm-hmm. I'd been dairy free for years, mainly being an asthmatic, like we talked about earlier. Asthma creates inflammation, creates phlegm. So being an athlete my whole life as well, I just really needed to make sure that my breathing was always optimal.
Right.
So being non-dairy always helped with that. So when I had cut out meat, there really wasn't much left to cut out. I also have a ton of food allergies. I'm allergic to shellfish and all nuts, which also makes the vegan thing even harder because so many vegans rely on nut sources for fats and protein, which right. I couldn't do. So that made it even more tricky. But yeah, going from being one of the most carnivorous humans that I've ever met. I did eat a 75-ounce tomahawk steak for my birthday.
Did you get a T-shirt?
I should have.
You should have got a
T-shirt. But I got a nice receipt, nice bill. Yeah, so I've always been a massive meat eater. My dad's face is painted on the wall at the Palm in Philadelphia. Grew up on red meat.
Okay.
So always huge, big carnivore. So I had woken up, it was probably 8 months ago, with my first interaction with gout.
Oh.
Yes. Now, being 28 and having gout is not something that you hear commonly.
Right.
That feeling, that pain, which if anybody's had knows, it's horrendous. It feels like there's an anvil, usually on your big toes where gout is usually for people first feel it. I never felt a pain like that. And I've been through some shit where I felt, a fair amount of agonizing pain before. And this was something that as soon as I knew it was gone, I was going to do everything I could to make sure it never returned.
Right.
Didn't want to go pharmaceutical route, prescription route in terms of, rebooting my kidneys or, relying on a pill to help me out.
So you're saying you can fix things with nutrition?
Can you believe it?
Can you pick up on these sarcasm in my voice right now?
Explosion.
Mind exploding. All right, cool.
You ate something and it made you sick, and then you stopped eating it, and then you weren't sick afterwards?
There's nutrients in food, people. All right, so you woke up with a nasty toe.
Yes.
What did your research tell you?
So basically, I had to go through the things that give you gout, that create what causes gout is puric acid within the blood that then crystallizes, and either it can go filter into your bladder and you get a nice kidney stone later, kidneys and then through your bladder, tries to make its way through your bladder, or it crystallizes within the joint or a place that you have predisposed arthritis. And it basically just tries to form bone, the crystallized puric acid just wants to create bone in between the joint, which is agonizing. So I'm looking at the list, went to City MD to find out, just exactly what was going on, to get my blood pulled. And, they go through, do you eat lots of red meat? Do you eat lots of fish? Do you eat lots of organ meats? Do you drink? What's your sugar intake? And now, we stated earlier, fat to fit. My nutrition, as far as I knew, was, immaculate.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't, we spoke about earlier, I barely even eat fruit just because of the sugar, because my body doesn't respond to sugar very well.
Okay.
So I, always thought my nutrition was in check. But protein content always high, mainly because was always strength training in some sorts. And I don't think until this year I'd taken off, a week from strength training. So to me, protein was always very vital.
Right, and that's something people talk about all the time. So, yeah, I mean, you can have excess amounts of protein, but wait a minute, I'm working out a ton, so my body should be utilizing that protein. But for you, something else was happening.
Right, and then that's like, you know, where I had to really, like, it couldn't have been just the, you know, the animal meat that I was eating. What else was in there? Alcohol. Wasn't really drinking. For the first time in my life, I was starting to drink, though, like, casually. So the alcohol, not enough to cause an issue. Then we go down and it's sugar. So, you know, gout was actually called the disease of kings, like back in the medieval ages, because the only people who got gout were people who were overindulgent, eating tons of meat and drinking tons of beer.
So it's like a rite of passage, like check out my gout.
Basically, it's like my Amex black card. It's like, oh, you got a black card? Yo, I got gout.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Like, you spent a lot of money and you ate a lot of sugar.
Gout it up. Yeah. So, yeah, so then I'm like, no, not a chance. It's not the sugar. I don't eat sugar at all. And then I start, you know, diving into my own kind of, you know, back pocket of knowledge on artificial sweeteners. Now, that's something that I definitely, since I lost the initial 70 pounds, have been abusing for a long time. Literally was carrying around a box of Splenda in my backpack, like black coffee and Splenda multiple times a day, protein powders, which, as we know, has tons of artificial sweeteners in it, those twice a day. Tons of, you know, anything that had zero sugar on it, it was in my fridge. So then I started doing research, you know, trying to find like long-term, you know, damage done from artificial sweeteners, which like just doesn't exist. Like we just don't know what this shit does to our body yet. Right. I did find some like studies on the fact that it does strain the kidneys because of the fact that it just doesn't filter out. It just kind of sticks around. Right, because your body doesn't know how to process it, right? Exactly. So just because it has zero on there, I mean, you're not getting the satiety of the calories as well. Right. So that's a common misconception that people have. Yeah, it's still like, you know, in terms of like, you know, satiety in the brain, it still lights up your pleasure receptors. So like you're still gonna want and crave that just as much as you do normal sugar. Right. But yes, you're just not getting that calorie count, which is all I cared about. And like I was that guy. I was like, oh, I'm not here for a long time. I'm here for a good time, and I'm gonna try to look good because I spent the first 24 years of my life not looking the way I wanted to look. You know, very vain sounding, but you know, we all get one body. And you know, do you want to drive around in a Honda Civic or do you want to drive around in a Ferrari? I want to drive around in a Ferrari. I want to look the way I want to look. You know, I'll take a Tesla because I'm more conscious about the environment. You asshole. So then, yeah, you are plant based, then, aren't you? He's not an asshole. He's a nice guy. So I started diving into this whole artificial sweetener thing alongside the animal protein thing and going vegetarian, plant-based. And so I knock off all the artificial sweeteners, even the you know, I was at a City MD, so I wasn't dealing, you know, with, not saying the City MD is not legitimate, you know, healthcare, but I wasn't dealing, you know, with like a dietitian or somebody who knows the direct effects of. You weren't at the Mayo Clinic. Correct. Okay. So, you know, going off of my own wealth of knowledge and research as much as I can gather on the artificial sweetener part, alongside the animal protein part. And what I had just come up with was dropping artificial sweeteners, going plant-based, eliminating that strain that, you know, as we all know, that meat causes, just because of the fact that like to digest a piece of meat compared to digesting a plant, that's like, you know, it's like plastic to, you know, honey. Like one's going to be smooth, one's not. Right. So, you know, I immediately switched, like I literally cold turkey, like the next day. I cut it all out, went full plant-based, basically vegan because of the fact I was already dairy free. Maybe 2 or 3 days had passed and the benefits like started just accruing. Like joints felt better. Yeah. I told you I had poor sleep quality then. Immediately started sleeping better, waking up feeling more rested. Energy throughout the day, wasn't having to take naps between sessions, wasn't, you know, getting groggy after meals. It was almost immediate how I felt, how much better I felt, and just undeniable because of the diet. How much do you think, if you were to go the typical American route where you just popped a pill, how long do you think it would take for you to feel better if you didn't change anything else? Oh man, well, I mean, I guess that's the thing too, is it's so many of us don't even know what feeling better is. Right. You know, yes, you can mask the symptoms. Maybe I wouldn't have gotten gout. I still would have probably felt the same way, which I didn't know was feeling shitty until I felt good. Especially as like an ex-athlete, like you think you're supposed to like live in this realm of pain because that's what it takes to like get better, or like that's what it takes to be, you know, no pain, no gain, like all that bullshit. So I didn't really know how good I actually could ever feel until that moment, until like 2 or 3 days after following a plant-based diet.
So a couple of days, your inflammation went down tremendously. So I mean, it makes sense. You got rid of all the the sugar / non-sugar, whatever the hell you want to call it, and anything that was going to cause any sort of inflammation in your toe and that gout. 2 days. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was like week 1. It was incredible. I mean, I also, like I said, don't want to leave it. Like, I did start doing IV treatment for proper hydration. I started doing supplemental like injections of like CoQ10, like a vitamin B complex, and with that, the IV, the diet, dropping the artificial sweeteners. Week 1 was like night and day.
Right.
Like I said, like, I could have been taking a pill for a long time and just never sacrifice that, quote unquote sacrifice, because I'm never going to go back. But in my eyes at the time, I have to sacrifice my favorite foods because they still are red meat. Like a filet mignon is still like going to make my mouth water.
Right.
But
tomahawk steak.
Yeah, if we're going big, that's still going to be what I'm going to crave. But just knowing what happens going back and feeling the way I felt for 20 some odd years, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned that you needed to supplement, and obviously everybody needs to hydrate more. But if you're not getting proper hydration, that makes sense that you were taking an IV and B12 supplementation. So that's the knock on people going vegan, right?
Yeah.
So B12 is coming from animal sources. So what else did you have to supplement beside B12? Some people talk about the dangers of going vegan. What do you think some of those dangers could be?
I mean, a lot of people get in, like, the B12 is like probably the biggest that you hear about. The thing is vegan or not, you have to supplement B12. Mm-hmm. Like, even if you are eating animal product, you're still not getting a sufficient amount. So you pop your B12, you vegans and you meat eaters, because none of us are getting enough. Everybody gets into the iron thing with the vegans. I've always taken a multivitamin. Yeah. So I've never been, as far as I know, deficient in any of the micro or like macronutrients, or no micronutrients. Right. Just because I've always supplemented it anyway. I mean, ultimately, people also want to, they get so crazy about the protein intake that it's not high enough. And then I just think that that's a general misconception that everybody needs the 1 gram per pound of body weight. But like, it's not body weight, it's lean body mass. Sure. We're not made up. I'm not 200 pounds of pure muscle.
I am. I'm 205 straight muscle, no fat.
1% body fat. Yeah, but then the fact that we're made of 80% water. Right. So like, you're not, that's a 200 pounds of skeletal muscle is somebody who's like, 300, 400 pounds, like, an Olympian maybe. Right.
So that's the thing. People are like, where do you get your protein from, right? So let's tackle the elephant in the room. where obviously you need protein for muscle repair and tissue healing and all that sort of stuff. But it also depends on your macronutrient ratio, right? So like, you have higher amounts of carbohydrates. You being vegan, you're probably going to be higher amounts of carbohydrates, and as one thing goes up, the other something generally should go down. Or higher fats. Like if you're keto, you're having higher fats. You're having less protein and barely any carbs whatsoever. Right. So where do you, let's go straight to the question, where do you get your protein from, and what warrior, when you are in your bodybuilding show and you're going ovo vegan, I can't stop saying that.
Vegan with eggs.
Yeah, there you go.
Vegan with a side of eggs.
Vegan with some egg whites. Now, what does your day look like? Where are you getting that protein from? What are your macros looking like? Are you eating 6 times a day? Are you eating 7 times a day? Are you eating twice a day? Give me a day in the life. Because I worked out with Gabe. This is the second time. I worked out with you today, and we did a little chesticle workout. Yeah. So that's
totally different from the first time.
Totally, and the first time was more of like a band, functional mobility workout. So completely different workout. We did a meathead workout. As I keep saying meat. I don't know. We did a veg head workout today. Yeah, we did. We did a veg head workout today, and I got a mainly plant-based meal afterwards. Yes. So where do you get your protein from? What do macros look like? What did a day in the life of Mr. Snow look like?
As the bodybuilder, or as the 13-hour day personal training?
Let's skim over the personal trainer, but okay. I think people are interested in, obviously you don't hear often about a vegan bodybuilder. And if they're huge, generally they're probably juiced up like crazy. Right. Which you can't really compare somebody that's full on natural.
Right. Well, then that's that. I mean, that's the obviously like the biggest thing in the sport of bodybuilding that people usually assume, but and just so, people assume just as equally with vegans that we don't eat enough protein.
Sure.
So I will preface like going into the show, I was doing intermittent fasting. So my protein intake was little to nothing. So basically my body was set up to grow for this. It was only a 6-week prep, which is little to nothing for a bodybuilder. So my body was set up and primed and ready. Like I wasn't lifting weights. I was cycling. I was riding my bike like 20 up to 30 miles a day. So like hadn't had like any hypertrophy workouts. Haven't had any strength training. Hadn't really torn fascia in like a long time. And again, was barely eating any protein. So my body was really yearning for it. That was something I struggled with in the beginning. Was like, where are my sources going to come from other than just like banging down protein shakes, vegan.
Well, you said your coach, who's a professional bodybuilder.
Yeah.
You guys kind of had a little tiff when you said you wanted to not eat any meat, because you said he's a meat and potatoes guy. Right?
Yes, he's as most bodybuilders are.
Right.
Because that's something I will touch on when we touch on how to do bodybuilding as a vegan. So yeah, when I was going through the list of coaches that I wanted to work with, I wanted to learn from the best, and I really wanted to basically just immerse myself to kind of gain education in this, because it is a sport. Right. And truly do it the right way in terms of as right as you can. When we came up with the meal plan originally, it was really just as any bodybuilding meal plan and macros look like, which is just obnoxiously high protein and moderate to high carb, which is going to taper to little to none, with low fat, but then aiming towards fats towards the end of the day, so that your blood sugar stay a little bit more level, satiety level stays a little bit higher throughout the night, and so your blood sugar doesn't drop when you drop the carbs later in the day.
I think one thing people don't realize, vegan or meat eater, bodybuilding is incredibly scientific.
It's like I've been referencing myself as like a science project for the last 8 weeks now, because I'm post show.
If you want to get in tune with your body, and I've done 3 fitness modeling shows, and my coach was Mr. Australia 2002. I mean, the last week I was eating meat, and I told you this before. I was eating tilapia and asparagus, nothing for the last week. No carbs, no seasoning that had any sodium level. In a bathtub the day before with 3-4 containers of baking soda dumped in there, so there's more. So there's more sodium in the water. It's pulling from my skin, and I'm just eating this dry tilapia and asparagus, and my brain was absolute mush because I had no carbohydrates. My brain didn't have any source whatsoever. Right. I looked the best I did in my life, but I felt the absolute fucking worst. So a lot of people that are on the stage and they're pumped up and they got this fake orange tan on, they actually feel like shit, because then I'm eating marshmallows beforehand, so that glycogen can go straight to my muscle tissue and pumping up. I felt like shit. How did you feel?
Amazing.
That's crazy.
Show day was amazing. I had felt awesome. So yeah, I mean, the entire process, that entire week, the hardest part was the water loading and cutting. The entire prep, like the food part, like in terms of like hunger and like my satiety levels, right? I felt great. Another reason mentally, because a lot of bodybuilding is mindset, was when the fact that like my cravings originally were set towards meat being as my favorite dish as a steak. Right. Well, when your steak is it's not on the menu, it's not in the meal plan, but it's also going to probably keep me in the bathroom for 2 days. Right. It's not really that alluring. Right. So it was really easy to stay away from like my favorite cheat foods during the entire prep. But in terms of like the week of the show and stage, show day, I felt phenomenal. I honestly think that because this was something huge and reflects how it was possible for me to feel so good. I passed 5 bowels. I took 5 shits on show day.
I tell you, when I did my shows, I was literally spray tanned up. And first thing, if you ever want to see pure entertainment, go to a bodybuilding show or fitness modeling show and go to the bathroom beforehand. You look at all those toilets. there was just orange butt marks.
It's like an Oompa Loompa.
All over. I tried to drop a bomb and I couldn't.
That's amazing though that you even could. Most people.
I was just trying to. I was trying to push and push and push, and I think I got like a pellet or so out.
Yeah.
And I was like, and my coach was like, "Mate, go try to take a shit." Oh, no, it was a horrible accent, Marcus. I'm sorry, buddy. Man, it was just like orange toilet after orange toilet, and like they're all trying to get it out, and you, on the other hand, you felt
5
absolutely
times,
amazing.
like 5 like healthy bowel movements, and like my coach was like, I don't even know what to say, because now I'd done a bodybuilding show about 4 years ago. I did a men's physique show. I didn't go to the bathroom for 5 days. And I almost went to the hospital. Again, I told you my mom's like a nurse, and I told her, and she was like, "What did you think was going to happen? Like, you were so depleted,
right?"
And now that was on a carnivorous diet. I was literally eating more meat than I'd ever eaten in my life. Right. So low carb, so low fat, like very little energy sources. Just basically a protein starvation diet is what I was doing, and it just destroyed my metabolism, destroyed my digestive system. And then this time around, like 5 times, I went to the bathroom and took 5 healthy, dumps on show day. My coach is like, I put his hands up. He was like, I don't understand it. So it just really showed me also that like internally that bodybuilding and doing it plant-based, doing it vegan, vegetarian, whatever we want to call it, clearly the body is responding in a much better way. Yes, I put my body through a lot of strain, especially with like the dehydration process, which also is supposed to not make you be able to take a shit, because you still need hydration and water within your colon to go to the bathroom.
Right, you're having fiber. You need to hydrate that to push it out.
So, and that was the thing, was I did like the dirty bulk in the beginning. Like I did pancakes, like first thing in the morning, and then for the rest of the day, my regular meals, which we will get into, because everybody wants to know the vegan bodybuilder's protein source.
Well, let's back up. Talk about that dirty bulk. One thing that people don't realize, like you're completely dehydrated during a bodybuilding show. We were talking when we were working out, and I had, after my tilapia asparagus bath, I ordered a pizza the night before, a meat lover's pizza, and when you have no water and you're trying to chew something like that, and like it just
cement,
it was absolutely horrible. I thought it was gonna be the most amazing thing. So you had pancakes the night before, and you had pancakes
breakfast, so like 5 in the morning.
Okay, and why did you have the pancakes? What's the premise behind that?
So the glycogen load, right? So you're still. You carb deplete for if we're 10 days out from the show, you carb deplete about 5-6 days before that, and then you slowly introduce carbs again and start pulling water. So the carbs will soak up the water, pull out the water that you have subcutaneously between the skin and the muscle, start making you look tighter, but really still wholesome carbs. So rice, potatoes, nothing crazy, no sugars as always. So the thing is on show day, you want your muscles as close to spilling over in glycogen as possible. Now, if you deplete appropriately, if you carb deplete appropriately, you can't really spill over on show day. Right. So
spillover. If you're taking just put a little analogy behind it. He's talking about spillover. You take a balloon and you blow air into it and you fill that up. Think about it as your muscle cell, and that can get so big when you spill over, that pops. Or if it was filled with water, then that will overflow, and essentially you're not having as much definition on your abdomen. So that is the risk and the scientific part of this. For you were just full and you didn't get any of that.
Right. So we depleted very well. So it started the morning with pancakes, 5 those nice little to-go containers of maple syrup.
Okay.
That was great. 4 ounces of black coffee. It was like supposed to be 8, but I lost track of how much pancake I was eating. I was like, oh shit, I may have drank too much.
That might be where the bowel movement came from.
The coffee.
4 ounces of coffee.
Well, 5 bowel movements. I don't know, but so it was the pancakes. After the pancakes, I had a Beyond Meat meal. So my main protein source throughout this prep is, thank God for Beyond Meat. Hopefully someone from Beyond Meat gives this a listen.
Hey, Beyond Meat, send Gabe some food.
It was 5 ounces of Beyond Meat, half a cup of lentils, and 5 ounces of sweet potato. Wow. Which is something that is in essence like a replication of all the meals, majority of the meals I was eating for the 6 weeks. Just obviously the portions change. So
you have a lot of Beyond Meat and a lot of
lentils and chickpeas I would cycle through. But so normal meal, so big pancake meal, normal meal. Right. Get to the show, blueberry muffin from Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, hey.
Which technically is not vegan.
Uh-oh.
But listen, that was on the menu. We showed up late to the show. They're calling my number as we're pulling up. I'm trying to get my grandmother and my mom tickets paid for, and I hear 23. And I look at my coach, and he's like, "Get the fuck out there!" Pardon my language.
It's okay. It's a podcast. You're fine.
So we had shown up late, so I never got to have the damn blueberry muffin. So I was really stoked for the blueberry muffin.
That's because it wasn't vegan. The muffin
was never meant to happen.
Trying to get you.
Never meant to happen. So yeah, so you want to eat, in essence, multiple forms of carbohydrates, mainly though pre-pump up as simple of a sugar as possible. Yeah. So most people do chocolate, candy, Pixie Sticks is a big thing backstage, just because it's like easy to gauge. Like you watch yourself literally fill out as you like dab it on your tongue. Right. So yeah. I did Sour Patch Kids. Oh. He got to sneak me a handful of Sour Patch Kids as I was like putting on my posing trunks. So
that was my jam in high school. I'd take some Sour Patch Kids. I'd sneak them into the movie theater and suck on those things.
Yeah. So you literally watch yourself though when you're so glycogen depleted. Your muscles are what we call flat. Like when you wake up in the morning versus what your muscles look like when you're mid pump at the gym. For people who don't know what that means. Like, girls get the booty pump at the gym, better get that booty pick because that's when that thing is looking as round as it's going to look. Right. Guys with the biceps, same thing.
Wait, I get my booty pump. Have I been doing it wrong?
You don't know the Sour Patch Kids.
That's right.
So, yeah, didn't really. So that would be the dirty glyco fueling would be pancakes, sugars, candies. Clean would be doing, like in essence your normal meal. So like a rice or a potato. Something that's much lower glycemic index.
Okay. Now, what would your macros look like and throughout the day, or when you're getting ready for your contest for the
6 weeks?
Yeah.
That was the thing. So the first meal plan that was designed was your prototypical bodybuilder, macro plan. It was high protein, moderate carb, low fat, which meant vegan protein shake. Egg whites, since I agreed to be an ovo vegan for this, followed by protein shake, followed by egg whites, and then your normal carb sources. And that's where my coach and I got into it. And I was like, listen, now, like, hopefully he doesn't get too upset when we were saying this, but my reasons for doing the show were never for initially to place or to win.
Right.
So,
well, you can say it now because you placed. So
this is true. Yeah, I did. So I I never set out on this venture to win. I'm continuing the venture, and it's not to become a pro, but it's because I have the opportunity to do so, being a national qualifier. So since the reasoning behind it was never to go into, but look as best as I could. Because let's be honest, if I wanted to look the best I could, I would not be doing this vegan.
Right.
So I was like, no, I want to show that I can do this with a sustainable meal plan that is real food that I'm eating and I'm chewing, and that could be turned into a sustainable diet for myself after this.
So for you, aesthetically, correct me if I'm wrong. Aesthetically, if you wanted to look as best as you could, you would have meat because then you can control your macros better, correct?
Correct. Since there is no such thing as a lean protein source for a vegan,
sure.
Meaning that every protein source is either paired with a carbohydrate or a fat, it is much more difficult to control your macros to the way that a meat eater or an omnivore, someone who has the full menu can. So yes, you're at a disadvantage there.
Okay.
Especially being as I did it 6 weeks out. If I did this, 40 weeks out or 20 weeks out,
you dialed in a little more.
Then I could gain much more control over my metabolism, and I could, prep much, easier and less drastically if I had more time. Being as the more time, the easier it is to control. So yeah, since I didn't have a full menu and because we had such a little time, it was like, how are we going to make this work? So we butt heads a little bit. And then I really just started sitting down, looking through the fridge, looking at the things that I have in my fridge that like I've been eating as an intermittent fasting vegan. And I had the Beyond Meat burgers, and I'm looking at them. Now they're not lean at all. They're equal parts fat, equal parts carbohydrate. Yeah. So I'm like, well, what if we do a different route? Not moderate to high carb, lower carb, higher protein, higher fat, which is not your typical bodybuilder diet. Right. They usually want to keep the carbs for the glycogen, for the pump, for the lift, to grow as well, which I still ended up doing. My body weight stayed exactly the same the entire prep. Meaning I lost body fat and gained muscle mass still.
So as far as you for training, was there any difference for you training as a vegan versus a meat eater?
More so like training like me and a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
The training was exactly the same. My training, my posing and lifting coach, he did almost every workout with me, and that guy eats like a trough of like chicken.
The professional bodybuilders not be like, man, you're not eating meat, so we need to lift with pink bands and weights all day, right?
No, that's just me.
That's just you. You like bands. You like bands, though.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Now you said something interesting when we were having lunch earlier. And what was that place? Eva's. This place is crazy. It's like a bodybuilding mecca.
Yeah.
In
it's just
Manhattan.
I mean, it is a bodybuilding mecca. That's like if you ask any like old school New Yorker like what Eva's is, and it's like where all the meatheads eat.
And it stands for what is it? Something.
Well, it's what is it?
Something athleticism.
I think it's endurance, vitality, athleticism.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But it's family owned. There's a supplement shop in the back. They don't cook with oils. They don't cook with fats. Mom and pop shop.
It's crazy. So we decided to give a shout out to them. I had a.
That's family. Yeah.
I had a vegan cookie that was delicious.
Vegan protein cookie.
Now, when we were talking, when we were eating, you were saying something interesting, that your life was kind of getting, term you use, out of sorts a little bit. So you signed up for a bodybuilding competition so you could regain control of your life.
Yeah, yes. Which is, I will give a shout out to my friend Carmen. She went away on vacation and came back as I was in the prep, and she was not very happy with me. And she said, your life is on the verge already of fracturing.
Yeah.
We'll dive into as to why. And you decide to do something that is known as one of the most emotionally, physically taxing things you can put yourself through.
Yeah. What
is wrong with you? She was like, you like masochist sadist, which went like,
right.
What is it? And truly, like back, the reason I did the show was to regain control of my life, being as a personal trainer, working to the capacity that I do most days. My schedule is a complete slave to my clientele.
Right.
I have a really hard time ever considering what I do a detriment to myself, since I absolutely love what I do every day. Every single day, I could not be more blessed to do what I do. And I also just have this work ethic that is I don't know if it's something to be proud of some days or if it's something to be ashamed of, because I don't know if it's like sometimes it's a pride or a fear thing, an insecurity thing. Like I just feel like I have to do more. I feel like I have to work more. And I'll average around like 10 sessions a day at Performance House. And it makes me a bit of a hypocrite with my clients, being just for the fact that I told you earlier, I try to tell my clients to create as many small wins for themselves every day. 3 things before you leave in the morning, 3 things before bed. I haven't had a nightly or a morning routine, and this is me being fully candid, like ever in my entire life.
So did you feel a little bit like a hypocrite when you were training your clients?
Absolutely. Especially since the way in which I train, I program off of mindset and how people feel and how they're doing, their self-efficacy and their confidence every day, and more so that than anything else.
Yep.
I'm not going to teach a new movement pattern on a day that somebody's just coming in from work after that. I've checked in with them. They're like, I'm having a shitty day, got shit on at work. That's not a day that we teach something new. That's a day that we knock it out of the park and we do something that they love.
Right.
Ultimately the brain leads, the body follows. So if the brain's not happy, it doesn't fucking matter what
right.
you do in the gym. So I had no morning routine, no nightly routine, working like a madman, intermittent fasting on accident because I just don't have the time to go find food.
Right.
So preaching and not practicing, and ultimately happy with my life and comfortable in many areas, which is very hard to find when you are a personal trainer in Manhattan. And just really struggling as to finding the root of why I was not happy. I was going to get my chakra aligned. I was looking at all these different things with, checking my energies and the people that I'm around, but I love all the people I'm around. So I'm just really searching as to find a way to fix it. And structure is just something that I crave as an adult. I had none as a child, like legitimately none. So now as an adult, it just serves me. It brings me happiness. And even though that the bodybuilding show I had done, excuse me, the bodybuilding show I'd done 4 or 5 years ago, I did it as wrong as possible. But the structure of eating at a certain time and having a certain amount of meals per day and working out at a certain time, which some people might call, like OCD almost, that it brought me happiness.
Right.
And ultimately having purpose and intention behind your day, I think brings people more happiness than they can ever know.
So is that advice that you give somebody to find your purpose?
Absolutely. And I'm lucky enough that I have my purpose is in my work every day. Most people don't do what they love for a living. I do. So I have purpose and intention through my work, which shows that even that, once you achieve that, even that might not be enough. So you do need to find something outside of work that you love and that fuels a different purpose. And I've been talking crap on bodybuilding for the last 5 years. Like, if you look at my Instagram posts over anytime we talk about it, I destroy it because of what it does to people's psyches and what it does to their metabolisms, and because people don't know how to reverse diet and stuff. But I think back to the show or my first show and how happy I was with the structure. I was miserable on show day then because I was about to fall asleep. I was so messed up, So I was like, I'm going to do this again, but I'm going to do it the right way. I'm going to do it in a different way with a different mindset. And, with a coach who really knows what he's talking about. And I'm going to do my due diligence and make sure that everything I'm doing, is going to make sure that I'm still optimally performing. I could still work as much. I don't have to be I remember being in college when I did my first show, not being able to go to class, just barely being able to walk around. A third of the calories that you burn in the day goes to solely just your electrical, synapse. If you don't have those calories, if you're starving, you can't think. So since we did this high fat, high protein, and my calories were good. My deficit wasn't so great that I was struggling. And I honestly think too, because being plant-based and my body was turning the food into energy so quickly, so that increase in metabolism, as opposed to when I was eating meat, was helping me lean out so fast that my coach, the first 3 weeks, we didn't change the portions. And I was I have 2 coaches, and I was is this okay? Is this good? I was is he just lazy? And he was no, it just shows how well your body's responding and that your metabolism is still speeding up. That these macros, these numbers are so spot on that you're putting on muscle and leaning out at the same time. So if you if your coach tells you during check-ins that your diet's staying exactly the same you have a 6-week prep, and the first 3 weeks the diet stays exactly the same. That just showed me my body was responding so well. So we didn't have to cut carbs. We didn't have to cut calories. I stayed exactly the same. The only thing we did was add a bout of cardio. 30 minutes. That was it.
What were those calories at the first few weeks?
So I was around, remember, I was going from intermittent fasting. So I was probably only taking in 1,500 calories a day when I was doing that, maximum. When I say maximum, it was 2 of those vegan protein cookies and that Lazy Hustler burrito. And I did end up getting partnered with a brand called Plantable. They're a meal prep company out in Brooklyn, all plant-based. Choking up on you here.
I do that to people.
It's just so emotional. So they, I did a little partnership with them, and they made the conversion to plant-based really easy. I think the average one of their meals is anywhere from 400, 500 calories. So I'd crush one of those at dinner, maybe a protein cookie, and maybe that Lazy Hustler burrito earlier in the day if I was lucky. So I was eating very little calories. So basically going into this prep, it was a reverse diet in and of itself. So I was at 2,400 calories, I think, is where we landed. 120 grams of protein was coming from the Beyond Meat, which means a lot of fat as well. And then the carb sources, for me, were considerably high from what I've known from bodybuilding. Obviously, you can reverse diet to the point where you can be eating 1,000, grams of carbs a day and not spill.
So reverse dieting, explain that if I've got my son's not 5, he's a year and a half or so.
Yeah.
How would you explain that to a child? What is reverse dieting?
Reverse dieting. So I guess in essence you have to have an event, to like really like break it down, because you're starting with one number to get to some place and then reverse back from it. So counting down from 10 to 1 and then counting back up from 1 to 10.
Okay, so it's anywhere from a decline in calories to going
To
up
then-
in like 10% higher a week or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So essentially, you're becoming metabolically flexible,
Correct.
as they say. So if anybody's ever heard where you're so low in calories and your metabolism's dropped down, this is essentially trying to counteract that a little bit.
Right. Since as you cut carbs, you become more insulin sensitive.
Sure.
So if you become so insulin sensitive like you are the day of the show, once you start throwing, if you go right back to a normal diet of, say, we can use like weeks. If I took my week 6 through 4 macros, let's just use carbohydrates, those carb portions, if I started eating those immediately, the first week after the show, I will gain body fat. My insulin sensitivity is going to be is going to be up. Insulin sensitivity will be up. My ability to break down carbohydrates won't be as efficient,
Right.
which means I'm much more likely to store them as body fat. I'm going to turn them. My body will turn them into sugars, and it won't just go as glycogen, and they will become body fat. So you have to slowly start adding energy sources, carbs and fats, back to your diet after the show, so your metabolism can slowly, heat back up again in order to handle more.
Makes
so.
sense.
You basically, the reason I use 10 through 1, so once you get down to day 0, that next week following the show, you're back at basically the week of your show's macros.
Okay.
So that, you're not going to just fluff up and start gaining weight, which after I did my first show, I gained 24 pounds in 6 weeks.
Yeah, I went to the Bellagio buffet and I put on 13 pounds, and I just kept going back and back. I had these walnut pancakes, and I took the biggest dump of my life afterwards. And I felt horrible,
Yeah.
but I paid $50 for this buffet, man.
Gotta make it count.
So I'm gonna make it work.
Yeah.
All right, now let's talk about. We got a few minutes left here. Easy wins. What are your easy wins, and what are some wins that people can do?
Then that's easy. Maybe not easy, because for some of us, they're some of the hardest things to do.
Okay, let's go. What wins?
Yeah,
Daily wins.
just small. I usually say small victories.
Okay.
Small victories, because they're not things that you didn't hit the lottery, you didn't get the promotion, but
Right.
they're just like hitting the lottery and getting a promotion. Those are things that are out of your control. So what I like to tell my clients to do is, before they leave their home in the morning, to create victories for themselves that they are in control of. Reason being, you want to leave your home feeling as self-advocate, as independent, as confident as possible, so that when you do get to work and your confidence and your success is truly not really in your hands, you just have to do what you got to do every day to get by and pay the bills. If you don't do that to your best of your ability at work, sometimes it's not a day where you can just hit home runs at work. Sometimes you don't have that big presentation you have to give, or that big speech, whatever it may be. Right. So sometimes days are just mediocre when you get to the office. So the small victories, literally making your bed. One thing first thing I tell people to do: drink 4 glasses of water. Get as much hydration as you can, because you're not going to be sitting there at work plugging down water. So get that in as well as you can. Then I try to add something that's a little bit more, maybe not intellectual, but sincere. Right. 3 affirmations about yourself. Write them down. Put them in your pocket. Challenge yourself. Send a text message to somebody. Someone in your family, a friend that you haven't spoken to in a long time. Yeah. So really try to fill your buckets before you go. You're building that self-efficacy. You're feeling good about yourself. You're going to leave your house, apartment, whatever it may be, just feeling a little bit more positive, and that you have control over you have control over your day, at least the things that you can. And if you can create success in the beginning of your day, in the end of your day, And again, like, you know, keeping in mind that these are the only moments that most of us have an opportunity, you know, to slam dunk it or hit a home run, even though they're just small little things. When you wake up, if you end every day and wake up every day feeling that way,
Right.
you know, you're just overall well-being is just going to increase. And you're, you know, knowing the fact that like you are the only person that you can count on and that you've created these tiny little moments, you're just going to feel better about yourself, and you're going to feel like you can tackle more and handle more. And, you know, those 3 wins turns into 5 wins. Those 5 wins turns into a, you know, a morning routine that you won't break. And just, you know, it just, you know, we want to look into it, survey data, whatever you want to say. Like, it just shows that people, the most successful people in the world, have routine, and they have things that they count on that it might be silly, you know, every day, just to build that efficacy for themselves.
So you're going to bookend your day, and eventually, hopefully, you fill in the middle.
Yes.
I like that. The quick, easy victories, if you will. Sometimes they're not easy. You know,
not at all.
Life is not easy, but
Well,
I think getting up and realizing that, and taking a moment to yourself, and whether that's I like the post-it note to yourself, or maybe your loved one, or just leave a post-it like, "Hey, love you, thinking about you." I think that's great. Now, one of my last questions: if somebody wanted to get into being more plant-based, if you will, what would your advice be for them?
Don't do what I did. Don't go full-fledged into it. You know, everybody loves to use like the 80-20 rule, but then they also never say, is it like 80-20 a day or is it 80-20 a week? Sure. You know, am I eating, animal protein once a day? What I've been advising is to really think about the meals that you truly enjoy, that you know that you will crave, because as soon as we deprive ourselves of something, we immediately start to want for it. Right. So think of those things, you know, before you do make the switch. You know, if you're someone like myself who usually can't go a Sunday without destroying about 50 buffalo wings, go Eagles. That's something that you want to keep in mind, right? Because you are going to have a tougher time breaking down these proteins if you don't keep them present in your digestive system to some degree. So I'd tell people to really think about the meals that they're going to crave in like a day or a week or two, whatever, and keep that source of protein within your diet, you know, however often as you like, right, to be honest. I tell people that because, you know, you also don't want to be like stuck in a pickle where like there's nothing for you to eat, and you are now like me, where it's like you eat a piece of pizza that had literally like a dime piece of prosciutto on it, and I felt the thing travel through my entire digestive tract like it was a solid marble. Yeah. That wasn't fun. So like you want to be able to still digest animal proteins, you know, for the fact that you might crave something and you don't want to get sick if you do indulge in that meal. Sure. Or solely for the fact that if you're just in a bind, you're traveling, you don't have access to a meal, and you know, end up having to eat animal protein, and you don't want to face the repercussions of being in the bathroom for the rest of the day. Okay. So find out, you know, do some due diligence on your own indulgences and find out what meal you can't live without, you know, or, you know, what couple of things that you truly love that are animal based, and keep them present in your diet and slowly switch over and feel the benefits. Good tips. Gabe, where can people find you, man? Oh, Eva's. Performix House, pretty much, you know, 10, 12 hours a day. Okay. Instagram at Gabe_Snow. Yeah, that's me. And I'm going to do a plug here. He also does some work with FitOps, which Performix House backs, a good organization. Check them out. Now, plant-based, ovo-vegan bodybuilding, fad or future, my man? Oh, man, for the future of what? Well, I mean, it's the name of the show. What do you think? Future. Absolutely. Okay. Nobody said that they're fad. Interesting. No. All right. Believe it's the future. All right. That was not Jon Snow. That was Gabe Snow, and I worked out with him, and we did some snowmosis. I tried getting in shape by vegan gains. By vegan gains. We did the plant head workout. I'm Joey Thurman. Thank you for joining this episode of Fat or Future Podcast. And remember, don't be a fatty. Take care. Thank you. All right, now we know what an ovo vegan is.
Thanks for coming on, Gabe. Yeah, your arms are bigger than mine. I'm not salty about it, brother. Next week on the Fatter Future podcast, we have Michelle Promaleko. Promaleko. I love saying that name. She's the author of the Sugar Free 3. How do you go sugar-free? It's gonna be tough, right? Well, she wrote the book to step it out for you, step by step. Lots of digestible information, pun intended on that one. Next week, Michelle Promaleko on the Fatter Future podcast. Don't be a fatty, fatterfuture.com, Fatter Future podcast on Instagram, at Joey Thurman Fit for all your social media trolling needs. Check me out on joeythurman.com. Take care. I will speak at you next week.